We are live. You can talk.
Did you post it to the .NET?
I'm just right now posting it.
Did you post it to Twitter as well, to Asp Net Core tag? I need to find my presentation and I will be starting finally. Let's see, it should be somewhere. Yay, no, that's not what I want. Yes. So hello, welcome. I'm very glad so many of you came because I expected like 5 people probably. But okay, I'm glad that even the people who don't have that much to do with .NET like Kentucky came because, well, I just lured him in. I just promised there would be JavaScript and Galt and Run, and he just believed me. I don't know why. But yes, I'm Jakub. Hello. I guess everybody from here know me. I work here at CN like 6 months, and I'm .NET developer. But I like all the platforms. I like Linux. I like OS X as well. So
you are the architect.
yeah, also part of the architect chamber and Microsoft Most Valued Professional. But I don't want to brag. Is anyone coming? No. Well, when I had a first look on the Asp Net Core 1.0, which used to be called Asp Net 5 or Asp Net Next, I realized it's basically like the Linux was the main platform for it. See for yourself. It's open source. It's command line oriented because you can do anything there from command line. You don't need Visual Studio. You don't need IIS Server. And raise hands who recognizes all of those tools. See, the Linux guy, or the OS X guy, only half, because he's the front-end developer. So the worst thing is there's almost no XML, and there are no GUIDs. Mind blown, really. So what better to start with than a demo on Linux? So I'll sit behind the computer. I will SSH to my Ubuntu server that runs in Azure Cloud to at least keep some Microsoft in it. And I will just type some stuff in and we'll show you how easy it is to actually run .NET on Linux.
Is it possible to see .NET on Linux? Because that is installed at the beginning.
It's kind of hidden, but I hope it will get better visibility over time.
Já mi tam vytvořil link dejte na ten asp.net and right.
So this is just a normal Windows command line, as you can see, and I will do SSH to new server to float app.net and log in as myself.
Is this something? Sorry.
Can you read it? Should I make it a bit bigger? Or is it okay for you?
Okay. I cannot read your password.
Yeah.
Too bad. Okay, so as you can see, we are on Ubuntu 14.04 long-time support version. That's the only platform, only Linux, or maybe only Ubuntu that I tried and was supported. I also tried the version 15, but they right off say that it's not supported because it's not long time supported. So it's probably not worth to start with that. So this morning I printed the basic CSproj file that you get from the Visual Studio. So could just anybody came here and just dictate it to me so I can take it in? No, that's not how it works. The whole structure got way simpler. Instead of XML, we use JSON. And we basically don't need any of this. We don't need any CSproj file that only gave us problems when we merged to TFS. Sorry, is there a question? You just look curious. And there is a proj file. It's xproj file, but it's only needed when you work in Visual Studio. So let's start with Hello World demo, and I will start with creating the project file. So I will open a new file in Nano Editor, which is called project.json. And here I have to specify the frameworks that I will be using. So it will be, I don't know, whatever suits you.
I think
you can just start eating, you can just grab them and come here, and we will just continue. You can eat them. Look.
Okay, so I will specify the frameworks that I will be using. In this case, is DNX Core 5.0 and no dependencies. Or I will specify the dependencies later. And then I will specify the dependencies that I will depend on, and that's system.console version 4.0 and system.
That's typing here, so he's just type it out.
I hope this is the right format. No, I just
Did I send it right?
Yes, a comma. And that's one thing that I wanted to ask you, because this is basically pair programming. So if you see me do some very stupid mistake, just tell me right off, because you are probably right and I am probably wrong. So we will save it, and now we can write the program. Or maybe we can validate it first and do D and U restore, which will try to restore all the packages that we specified as a dependency. DNU stands for .NET Utility. It will be renamed to just .NET something in the future, because there is a movement that's called .NET Core, which will in the future be merged with the Asp Net Core, and all the DNX stuff and DNU will be renamed to .NET. Okay, so as you can see, the restore completed. We get something from cache, we get something from the internet. And now I will create a new file that is called program.cs. And that we're using system. Oh, we're finally writing some .NET. Alright. Let's write a definition for the class and the main entry point, which is a static main void, no parameters. Does it look correct to you? Never mind. Should be, I hope. So let's exit that, and now we can use the DNU utility again and do DNU build.
How it knows what should be built?
It knows because the project is defined as a folder that has a project.json file in it. And it only looks inside of the project.json to know what frameworks should be used. Wow.
It's all right.
That's how it works.
See, this is the color of love. It's the color.
Okay.
How we get 1,000 errors out of 2 lines?
Yeah, I know what I did. I forgot to actually create a folder for the whole solution.
Okay.
Not bad for the first one.
Yeah. So let's just do MK project. Okay, as you can see, the build succeeded. So now we should be able to run this application on the Linux server. So I will type .NET execution, which is DNX, and run. And for that, I would like to ask my assistant if we could go here and just sit behind the computer and press enter.
It's hard, but you know. Really? Okay.
It's a really slow server, so it
Now
takes
you're
some time.
responsible how it's gonna be.
Just give it a second. Anything happened yet? Did you break it?
That was my favorite.
And it's done. Here's your certificate. World's best enter presser.
Yeah,
Congratulations, man.
Thanks.
Real honor, right?
Yeah, I will test this.
I know you don't use Linux that often, but when you do, you just run .NET on it.
Yeah. Do it properly.
What's up?
Jestli tam je žebra. And go to the
Better?
Go ahead.
Okay, so that was the first demo. As you can see, instead of having all this project csproj file that's full of XML and full of stuff, yeah, you can just take it if you want. We have this very simple project. Most of it actually is generated files because we only have 2 files. One of them is the program.cs, which contains the executable code. And the second one is project.json.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, that just contains 5 lines. Go on.
It didn't sound like any folder that contains the dependencies that you install.
The dependencies are downloaded to a global cache inside of the system.
Right. So,
But when you build the project and when you want to publish it, you can pack it all together and then it becomes portable, which is one great thing about the new framework, because it's not monolithic thing anymore. You just package whatever you need, so it's just a pay-as-you-go program, or how could you say that? And so this was really simple application. It just writes something to the console. You can just do it in the console directly, so why bother? But what if you needed a web server? And I already have a very simple web server on this server. So it's in the projects folder. It's in the simplest. Web folder. If we look at that, this is a full-blown web server with just 5 files of code. And one of them is the actual index.html that contains hello world string. So let's try to run that. This time we don't say DNX run. Instead, we say DNX web, because the DNX run means run the actual endpoint of this service, but this service doesn't define an endpoint like start myself. Instead, it's hosted inside of a web server that's called Kestrel. And so we need to say start this first and then load this app. And we do that through the DNX web.
The server, it's a thread-based or event-based? You said the name of server, Castro?
Kestrel, yeah.
Castro. It's a web, event-based or thread-based?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Slow server. Again, we could play some elevator music if you want, or if there are more questions.
Yeah, like I will follow up, but is it like okay? So like for you said like if the dependencies are installed globally, what will happen if you can have different versions? Are they gonna like there will be any collision or something?
No, those dependencies are just packages. Those are like npm packages or power packages, or those are NuGet packages. So this is a packaging system, and it's just locally copied files that have versions. And then you can define inside of the project.json the dependencies that you rely on through the semantic versions. And so if you have conflicts, you have them in your project, not in the whole cache, because you can install as many different versions as you want. Install is probably not the right word. Copy paste is, I guess.
And I heard that even the kind of core parts of .NET are now Nugget packages.
Yes, that's the one thing. You no longer deliver the whole framework as one big package that you can install on your system. Instead, every piece is split into small package, and those packages are linked together. So it doesn't need much work on your side, because as you could see, for example, we defined a system.console, which has like 10 or 20 different dependencies, and those dependencies have more dependencies. But all you need to specify is just the console package, and it will resolve it for you. And if you get conflicts, then it will tell you, but never happened to me yet. So what I'm trying to do here now is to actually access the server on the internet. And it's on port 5000. Yeah, unfortunately this doesn't work because the server is so stupid by default that it doesn't even know that the index is the default file it should find. So you need to say it's index.html. It can just serve static files, but it's still a server, and you can just still alter it in 5 or 10 lines of code. So this would be the very basic demo, the simplest applications that you can write in web and in console. And now we should be writing together a more convoluted application, which would be an attendance application. I will show you how it will look like when it's done. And we will showcase some of the new features that are in the ASP.NET MVC.
And this, I don't know, it's in what version? Release candidate or?
The current version is release candidate 1, update 1, but the current unstable version is release candidate 2, and I'm not sure about the right version, but it's going forward, and it should have been released already, I think. But they did a lot of mess with the whole renaming from vNext to ASP.NET 5 to ASP.NET Core, and now there is Core.NET. And so all the packages need to be renamed and synchronized.
Yeah. Develop some library for all and rename it.
But the other thing that's very nice about it, and he's going away, is that because it's open source and they really embrace using GitHub, you can just follow the development. And if there is an error, and I found few, you can just go to the GitHub, look through the issues, and more than often you will find the actual problem that you are having, and you will see that it's already fixed. Or you can just write a comment and get response in like 1 day, 2 days from the developers directly. If you compare that with Microsoft Connect, where you just file a bug and it sits there for days, weeks, months, and you need like 20 upvotes just to get a workaround from Microsoft, that's something totally different. So this is the application that we will be building, or I will be building and showing the features to you. It's a standard application generated from the standard template. What I changed is that I'm not using the SQL server on the backend. I'm using just an SQLite file or database file, because the Entity Framework 7, or as it's now named, Entity Framework Core 1.0, supports multiple versions of SQL, like no, it doesn't support MySQL, but it supports the Microsoft SQL, of course, SQLite, and one of NoSQL storages that I can't remember.
So no Airflow. Or no Airflow.
I don't think there's provider for it, but there's provider also for PostgreSQL, I think. So let's try to log in if that works. Okay, we are logged in as a test user through the standard ASP.NET identity that's in the version 3 now. And so we have a cookie and we are logged in as a test user. I preceded the database, so we don't have to deal with that because I think that's more advanced and it's still the same as it was. Now we can select the entry type that we want to insert. We should insert some node. So maybe something more polite. Hello, application.
Can read it anyway.
You can read it?
No.
Oh, too bad.
Okay.
Is it better?
Yeah, that's much better.
And now we save that, we got some very normal bootstrap message back, which says successful, yay, awesome, it works. You can close that and do another thing. It's always good to be polite with your applications because then they don't break even during the demo. So this is a very basic application. It doesn't have much functionality, but it goes from the web through some service, through Entity Framework to the database, stores the data, and then when we retrieve the data, we get them again from the database through some service to the web. So let's log off, and let's start from the beginning. So here's a cleaned up version that doesn't have any backend. It has the SQL database, SQLite database, but it doesn't store the entries by itself. If we start it, we can, here at first we can see, can anybody read it? Is it too small? Is that better? Yeah, no?
Maybe zoom in a little bit. Maybe zoom in a little bit. Just a little bit.
Maybe close the right side. Or
I guess.
the right side.
This one? This one?
And the bottom.
Or maybe full screen.
You can do that as well.
Last.
Maybe go to the last to this.
Better?
Could also work.
So this is pretty standard HTML. We get some model using garbage up here, but we don't need that. And if we switch to the to the web page, we can see that we are rendering the message all the time. We have some validation summary here. We have the entry type that actually works, and we can select it, but we have validation underneath it. And then we have a text area where we can input the nodes, and we have validation for that. And when we click save, then it just updates and nothing happens. We don't have any review of the already entered entries here, but we can still log in because, as I said, that's what I pre-made and preceded, so we don't have to deal with that. So now we need to create a view model and just bind the HTML to it somehow. So what are the properties that we have here? One of them is the entry type, which is 1 or 0, and has some name. So an enum would be a good candidate for that. Then we have a node that's just a node, it's just a string and has some length. And if you remember the demo, we had also the username, and we had the time when the entry was stored, obviously. So we need to add that to the data as well, but we don't want to put it in the editor because we don't want the user to edit the time. It should be the current time. Same for the username. It should be the username of the currently logged in user. So how do we map the, for example, this select to a view model? So first we should probably create a view model, because now we are using just a view model that's of type dynamic, so it can contain pretty much anything.
And you prepared this page in forward, or?
Yes, this is what I prepared. Is not generated from the.
Yeah.
One thing that might trip you up, which tripped me up pretty bad, is when you go to login and you generate this page by default. In the default template, it says email here, but it actually looks for a username, which really sucks for debugging, especially when you are changing the storage underneath it and you really don't know what's happening, if it's compatible or not. That was a hell of a lot to debug. Okay, maybe we should start with the text area. So in the traditional MVC, we would probably write something like this, and we would be done with it. We would have this HTML helper that starts with an @ symbol, something that you never see in HTML, because that's just something very specific to C# or Asp Net MVC. And then you have this label for, then you have a lambda, then you have a new, and then you have to specify a class, and it also has to start with an @ symbol, because otherwise it doesn't compile, because class is reserved word in C#. And it's just really, really, really ugly. And it's just very different from the HTML that you would ideally want to give some front-end guy and say, make a nice HTML page, give it back to me, and I will just bind my data to it, and it will work, and style it for me as well. Yeah? Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See?
It's like the
No, it's not correct.
Yeah.
It is not correct?
No. We don't need people like this.
You don't need people who write HTML for you?
You have console.
No.
You're not normal.
Okay, but there's a lot of people who make living by that, and they just write HTML, do the front end, and then just give it to the backend people and do their stuff.
Actually, there will be like a talk about this, and it's called how to maintain code bases, CSS code bases. And like a lot of developers don't take it seriously, but yeah, so maybe if you attend this talk, you will change your mind. Yeah.
I wasn't putting down front end. I was just saying that.
I think that was when.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. One thing that's very special about this is you have this data attributes that you can use. You can just specify data special attribute, and just use it in your JavaScript to do something with the div. And if you want to bind data to this special attribute in the HTML helper for the text area, you have to replace those dashes with underscores, because this is, again, not a valid identifier in C#. So if you have a lot of HTML or a lot of editors on your web page, you might end up with just those helpers, and it makes a lot of impedance between what you want to express in the HTML and what you will actually see in the editor. So the came with a better version where instead of writing something like this, you can just use a special attributes that start with ASP, then dash, and then, for example, ASP4, which, if we place it here, or maybe we could create a model first. We could say ASP4 node, and that will try to bind it to a node property on our model. Simple as that. And it still looks like HTML, which is good. So you can just get the HTML from your front-end guy, copy paste, and it's working, or should be working. So let's create a model. How do we call it? What do you think? Entry view model? Sounds good. Just generate it for me. Okay, where's my solution explorer? So I will do it myself.
Na to vytvořit implementaci to vytvoří special file.
Okay, I will go to view models. I will create a new folder here. I will call it home. I just can't do the full screen. I just don't see all the information that I need. Sorry. But I think you could still read it, right? So let's just create a new folder called home. Let's add a new class. Call it entry model. And here we just add some public properties. One of them will be the node, which will be public string. And we will say that this one is required. And just for the sake of it, we will say it has to have maximum length of 1000 characters and minimum length of 20.
Also attribute to be polite on this node.
You have to program that and then just put it on NuGet. Sooner or later, it will be used in every application. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with it, the required attribute then communicates to the view and adds a data validation attributes. Those are picked up by jQuery validation and can show you messages that say this is required, this has this string length, and so on. I guess everybody's familiar with jQuery here. Anybody who's not? He is not. Okay, we have to bind to the right namespace.
It's your jQuery.
It's my jQuery.
Okay.
I guess I was nice to my Visual Studio. Okay, something is seriously broken here. Great. Should be picking up the model, but it's not. Does anybody see the mistake I'm making? You think the packages are missing? No. So let's just close this up. And open it again. No. Doesn't like me. But if it binds, we shouldn't be getting any build error now. So we will see. And we are getting one. Okay, that's from the code that's on the bottom. Let's try again. Okay, so that's maybe just the Visual Studio picking up what I'm trying to say. No, never mind. No, with capital M, that's the reference to the current model. At least I hope. Okay, but we need way more information on the entry view model, or one more information, and that's the entry type. It will be an integer. And we will bind it to this select. So again, ASP4 equals entry type. And this one is also required. But there is not much chance that we won't provide this one because there is one pre-selected.
Required is not necessary because it's not available.
Yeah, I just like to put it in there. Because then you don't have to think about it. Is this nullable? Is this not nullable? And then you change it and it changes the meaning. Yeah, it's just my way. And we, of course, need to post from this form to some post action on the controller. We could keep it as it is because by default it will post to the same controller to the same action. But just so you can see the helpers, you can do ASP controller and specify that this will be the home controller, and then you can do ASP action and post to the index action. Instead of doing something like this, at using and basically raping the using statement, HTML form and so on, you will just use the standard HTML and you will say that the controller to post to is the home and the action to post to is the index.
Any plans to support like completion for the ASP, like those special attributes? To be nice to have,
I think there was completion, but I maybe broke it somehow.
Okay.
This should be a validation summary, so this would be ASP validation summary. And this is where the model kind of breaks because you have to provide an enum for this. And I think it would be better to just provide some string value, some 1, 0, something like that, because you are specifying if you want to see all the validations from the whole form or if you want to see just a subset that's not in those validations for each of the form elements. And I don't remember the attributes, so let me just look it up in my code. validation summary model only. Okay, this is fine. This should be again ASP4, so we don't have to say which item this is for. Okay, this is to be the same thing. Options are okay. We could define some enum here, but in and out should be okay because we are using the values underneath it anyway. And this should be ASP validation for entry type, so we can get back the jQuery message if the validation fails. Same here. Note. I can delete this special attribute and say ASP validation message note. Good. Okay, see ya. Now we were talking about the jQuery, and one very important or very useful thing that you can do with the new tag helpers is something like this, where you specify which environment you are currently in. And by default, you have development set and you have a staging and production. And what this enables you to do is to, by default, take the script from a CDN, which is a content delivery network. And this has the effect that, I show you how you validate it in your mind. This has the effect that when there is a popular version of, for example, Bootstrap, and a lot of pages uses that version of Bootstrap, it's probably in your cache already. So you don't have to download it again. And if everybody would be using the same CDN, you never need to reload that Bootstrap because somebody else probably did that for you. And then you have this fallback SRC that points to the minified version of the jQuery validate. And then you have the test that checks if you should fall back or not. And then you can just, for your development, specify the full script. So when it fails, you see the actual messages, not just it happened on line 1 in this script on the characters 1365 in variable A.
So, a lot of details. Thank you.
Try to be specific, you know. There are a lot of other helpers like ASP version, which you can use for cache busting, which is basically when you download a picture and then you update it on the server, the downloaded picture might already be in the cache of the user, but you want him to see the new picture, and you don't want to throw away the cache, or you want his cache to be thrown away, but otherwise you want the pictures to be cached normally. So you just append some version after the name of the image, and it will be downloaded to his browser automatically. If you are interested in those helpers, and I think there will be a lot more coming, you can look in this view import, which used to be a part of the web.config, and here it imports the Microsoft ASP.NET MVC tag helpers. So you can just go to your documents. No, it's in your profile actually. You can just go to your profile, DNX, packages, and look at the actual implementation through JetBrains.peak, for example. So let's check if that's still built. Cool.
It's pretty much quicker than the old MVC application itself.
It is, yes, the feedback loop is way shorter, and what you can do actually is to start the IIS on the background without debugging, and when you do any change in any code, it will just compile it in memory, send it to the server, and you will see the updated version in the browser, which in when you already set up in your browser a tool that automatically updates the page for you when you save it, it just gives you immediate feedback about your changes. I think that's really nice. So now we need to take this entry view model and post it to our home controller and just handle it somehow. So here we already have the get action, and we will create a post action. We do that by specifying, is it cleaning up? It should be going home probably. This is a entry view model. Let's call it VM. And I know that when I will be saving it to entity framework, I will need this to be async. So I will just say that this will be an async action. And what I will do here is that I will request a DB context from dependency injection that is built inside of this framework. And if we look here in the startup class, which has quite a lot of magic that I unfortunately can't go into detail about, we can see that here a DB context of name application DB context using this connection string and using SQLite is defined. And the services is the dependency injection container or the IOC container that you can use, and simply by specifying a constructor with that dependency, you can just retrieve the context and use it in your controller. So we will start by validating the model. That will be model state is valid. We will do some action, and if it's not valid, we will return the current model so the user can edit his data. But he won't be probably able to post back anyway because the jQuery will stop him from it. But we still need to validate on the server side anyway because they could be posting anything.
It could be disabled, or JavaScript could be disabled, or you could hook into it.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to rely on the client side to actually do the validation. And so we can just save to the context. But we first need a DB set for that. So entries, add, and we need a entity of that type because we don't want to bind a view model directly. So here we will create the entity, and we don't have a type for that either. So that will be new. Oh, that's entry. Sorry. And we will be mapping to that. And then we will save it to the context. So first, let's create this DB set. DB set could be roughly translated to a table in the SQL server or in the SQLite database that we have. But that's very, very rough saying, but let's go with that. We'll just create an entity for it. That should go to the models. We are in the models. That's cool. And this will have a public integer ID. So we are able to find it in the database. We'll define that this is the primary key in the DB.
The shortcut is prop or property.
I know, but it's extremely slow for some reason. You type something here. Oh, now it's fast. I don't know why. But for me, it usually takes like 3 seconds to go from one property, one template item to another. So that's why I don't use it.
Probably when you define these, contains a lot of stuff, maybe.
Yeah, maybe sometimes. Where was I? So yeah, this will be an entry type that we will probably save as an enum. Or maybe we can just keep it as an integer as well. Type. And as I said, we need the time, so date time offset for that. Of course, we need a name of the property. That will be this time. And then we will have the user. Yeah, this could be an application user. Application user is built-in class, let's say, that the ASP.NET Identity framework by default uses to save the users. So by this, we can specify that this will be a navigational property. So it's basically just a foreign key in the database that points to a user in different table in the database. So we have the reference from one to another.
It doesn't have to be virtual.
Doesn't have to be what?
Virtual. Virtual.
It can be virtual, but it doesn't have to. So this is required, and this is also required. I hope it doesn't have to be virtual. So we'll see if it bites me or not.
In the old version, if it's not virtual, then it's provide you lazy load.
I don't think we will be doing lazy loading anyway.
And what about node? You miss node?
Another
Node?
attribute.
Attribute node?
Oh, yeah, nodes. C, pair programming at its best. And this one is also required.
Testing pair.
And we will also specify 1,000 and max min length is 40. Yeah.
Then how is the application user mapped to another entity? Or
I'm sorry?
you said the application user is mapped to another entity, or?
Yes, because what you can see here is if we go to this DB context and we navigate to this base class identity DB context, I hope you will be able to see it. It takes type of T user and it implements yet another class. And this yet another class, I think, implements what we need to see, and that's the user's DB set, which will end up being the application user. So the entity framework, when you specify the application user type, it sees, oh, this is part of my model already. I will just create a foreign key to the table of application users. And so it will link to application user that's in the database.
Just a small detail. You specify different parameters for the node. It will collapse when you try to translate.
Did I?
I think so. I'm sure. Different parameters for node to the model and for node to the 20 minimum like 20 and
The second one was 40.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. See, I can use a pair programming. So we can save that. And now let's check if we can at least post back to this action. Still getting the valid. Oh, I forgot to remove the messages from the validation. So the model is valid. We can look on it as entry type of 1 and note of the awesome string that I just typed in. So it posts back correctly. So now we need to map it to the actual entity that we will be storing in the database. So the ID we won't map, node we will map to vm.node. I don't know why I always do that. Entry type will be, of course, entry type on the vModel. The time will be the current time, so date time offset now. And the user will be the current user in the application, which is user dot identity dot. So it's just user dot get user ID. And since we defined this to be application user, don't mock me. Where's the property? Okay, the ID on the normal identity user is a GUID, so we need to parse that down to a GUID. You can see it here because it's just generic type, but I know it's a GUID. So here,
user ID as well, or
this is the user ID, I think. So we just parse this down. And
like column user ID.
no, this should be the user.
The user is object.
Yes.
So we just create a new application user with the let me just check my notes to see how I planned it originally.
This is possible in new entity framework because in the old one it creates the new object for it, new role in the database.
Okay, originally I didn't link those two together. I just created a person ID in the table, so we don't have a strong relation between the application user and the actual entry. So I will just revert back to that. So we don't have to play with it here because entity framework is not very friendly sometimes. This will parse, and if we go here, this will be just, no, just a string, why not? And then we don't need to parse this one. And everything should be fine.
Are you used to unhibernate? Are you used to unhibernate?
No, I think that's even worse, but now it will blow up because it won't like this message. Not polite anymore. So note is nice, type is nice. Now it's okay, and this hopefully is now because we are not authenticated. So we need to put an authenticate attribute on this home controller, or authorize attribute. To force the user to authorize himself when he tries to access our application. So now we got automatically redirected to the login page. We click login, we type something in, save. Yeah, I need to fix the index. Who knows what's missing?
Context safe changes.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just first fix the index validation. Delete this. This. Yes, that's it. I hope so. And here we do save changes async. And we will just delete. Most of the API in the Entity Framework 7 or 1 is now async, and a lot of other stuff is just async in this framework. So that's why I'm trying to use it here. It has a lot of other benefits and a lot of other downsides, but you can now even use async in the views and so on. What's your problem? Late. I thought I forgot one validation summary, and there it is. Yay. Okay, let's just do something radical and just delete the database, create a new migrations, because the SQLite doesn't really support migrations that much. So what you do, just delete all the data, or at least what I do for this project, and you're done with it. So this will be C sandbox. This one. Another not so nice thing is that you can either specify the name of the database directly, or you can specify an absolute path, but you can specify a relative path to the root of the project for the SQLite, because it just doesn't understand that connection string. So when you run it normally, or you see the database, you will get one here, which is this database SQLite. And when you then run it through IIS, you will create yet another database file in a totally different place. And if you then select to just host it directly in the Kestrel without the IIS, it will then revert back to the first file outside of the www root. Quirks of unreleased software, you know. Yay, now we get another error. So let's try to delete the migrations as well. Which is, oh, we don't have any. That's weird. So let's play in Package Manager console for a while. It used to be you has this enable migrations and update database PowerShell commands that you could run, and that would orchestrate the work with Entity Framework for you. Now you have this command in the project JSON, that's EF, and points to Entity Framework commands. And you can execute it through the dnx command. So you will do dnx ef migrations at initial. Will blow up. It's possible that it won't find the command right off. Okay, so we need to do dnvm, which is yet another tool, .NET Version Manager. You can use it. No, you can't use it here with the list, unfortunately. Maybe it's just my computer, but you can do dnvm list, and you will get all the .NET versions, .NET Core versions that you have on the system. And it also has a pretty nice Linuxy GUI where you get awesome help and awful lot of help to do what you need. But what we need to do here is just to say dnvm use the default, and then we want to run the dnx command. And I hope that will fix it. No, it won't. So we need to navigate to the source and attendance core and try it again. And then do dnx database update.
You should remove the only migration, shouldn't you?
I think I just created one. So when you get this error with SQLite, you just delete the database and reapply the whole thing, and you delete the migrations. So I hope this will fix it for the model that we just created.
Does it work also production?
It's not released yet, but
Only once.
yeah, I don't think you would use it for anything serious in production. So fingers crossed. Yeah, it's saved. But now we don't get any list because we didn't implement that yet. But luckily I have, I'm in the right project, cool. I have this tool, SQL something, this one I guess. No, it was the other one, of course. Wow.
That's cute.
There should be a small tool that I used just before the demo to look inside of the database. Now it's nowhere to be found. SQLite. Okay, we will have to believe the data are in the database. Too bad. Now, as I said before, we injected this application DB context from the dependency injection container that's built inside of the application. And in the same way as injecting the context here, you can actually do injection inside of the views directly. I don't think it's recommended for most of the uses, but if you just want to populate a list of all the articles you have in the system, or populate a list of any other item that you have in the system, it's not worth it to do it in the controller because you need to repeat the same action every time you post back the data and every time you retrieve them, and you realize, oh, there is some error, you need to repopulate it. And if you forget about it, the user will just get an empty combo box. And so why not just put it inside of the view directly? So for that reason, you get a new add inject keyword for the views. I should have one prepared here already.
A little bit against the MVC, kind of pattern.
It is, yes,
So
but it's
also,
pragmatic.
it's also like a question because I saw that like the validation rules of the UI are kind of in the model, like the required thing in MaxNet, which was kind of MVC.
The attributes that I'm using are reused for the entity framework and are reused for the MVC. And if we would implement this correctly, we would have yet another item, yet another object in the middle.
Right.
That
So-
would be the actual entity, but we don't have any behavior. We are just using this one to map to this one. So we are skipping quite a lot of stuff here
Yeah.
just to show the MVC part. Where is my shared view? Attendance review is my shared partial view. I will just uncomment this, if that will work. And here you can see we have an inject keyword, which for some reason is not recognized now, but it works. And then I'm trying to inject some iEntry service, a service that I created to just load all the, or just the page of the items that we have in the database. So let's write that service. We can probably put it inside of the models. Add a new class. I'll just find it here so I don't have to come up with it again.
Just for you can put in time Timur 1 hour this lecture, and like you'll be there. Thank you.
Ciao.
So this will be an interface. This interface will define, oh, probably the method that we have here, right? So let's ask for entry display view model, I think. Or let's just make it simpler because I don't want to write an awful join and link anymore. So this will be just the same view model, and we will just retrieve it from the database. Page. We can implement this in a derived type. And again, we can request the context here. This will be which is generate a constructor. Context. HTTP. No, just identity.
Could I inject here?
iFriends user. Okay, we need to inject an IHTTP context accessor. That's part of the framework, and I don't really know how they came up with this name. If it could be called just IHTTP context. And even the HTTP context itself is just an abstraction, so okay, I see a lot of you is getting bored. Should I continue or should we wrap up? Because there is not much different anymore. So we can just save this one, we can save this one, and here we will say that context entries user equals to HTTP context user. What's that?
No.
We will take 20 and we will skip 20 to page. Yeah. And
The letter value should be this, shouldn't it?
I'm sorry.
The letter value should be this.
That's right. Yeah, that should be a variable of entity view model.
Return is
And async as well. Whoa, double Underlinings. Wow.
It's await or no, await.
Right. No, it should be return await.
Sorry.
Because you have to entry a conversation, maybe whatever.
Here it should be returning this one.
You should
Wait.
either return entry or
This one. Yeah, that's why I didn't want to return this one, right? Let's just make it simpler so we can wrap up.
task. Yeah. E-list.
Really? No.
Oh.
Cannot implement the interface. Okay, that's the interface problem. Oh, finally. And now we should have this service. And for some reason that doesn't work. This was just the user time note. Mad. Tree has a
And you just get live, that's good. Have you used the be polite attribute?
No, be polite attribute not included.
Maybe it's easier to replace and repeat with some mistakes, you know.
Possibly, yes. But I still don't get why it doesn't recognize the inject keyword, because that might be the whole problem. I'm pretty sure if I created a new project, it would work. But this is just a demo effect. No. Is that the last demo just doesn't work? Too bad. I think we should wrap up because I'm being too long. But this inject keyword should help you to take the dependencies from the dependency injection container that you define here in the startup class. And you can, whoa, it's so big I can find it. Service.
And how does it work? This is called through Ajax, and it's generated on server, and the whole part of the page is sent through Ajax, like HTML.
Yes, it works still the same. It's generated on the server and it's sent to the client normally. There is no magic, no JavaScript processing it on the client side. No, it just generates it on the server. Okay, sorry for the broken demo. I think we should wrap up because it's getting broken on me.
We can agree.
Too much.
It works and it passed acceptance test.
Yeah, if we have the approval of the tester. So anyway, the Asp Net Core. Oh, wow. Asp Net Core, I think it's very exciting new technology, even though most of the stuff is broken, as you can see. And it will break under your fingers more and more. But the great thing about it is there are awesome error messages. One error message that I got was like, you don't have your database seeded. Do you want to seed it? And I just clicked the button directly inside of the Internet Explorer and it just fixed the problem for me. and you get awful lot of help content, and there is big traction on the internet and on the Twitter. So every time you look for a problem, you will just end up on GitHub, and somebody already solved the problem that you have, at least for me, and I think I worked with it quite a lot. So I hope you will pick up the ASP Net Core and you will try it, and you will try to push it to new projects, and you will try to work with it. And if you do, please let me know what you created. And if you have any problems, then just ask me, if maybe I will know, or just ask on the Google and share on the internal Slack, probably. That would be the best. So thank you. That's
How
all for
is
me.
unit testing of ASP Net Core?
Unit testing. Oh, I just said Mutaki like 2 days ago. If I won't be, I will be, if I get lost, so I will just start talk about testing, and it will keep me busy for 2 hours. So, yeah, the unit testing, you can use XUnit, for example. It now has a runner. So if we Google for DNX,
What DNX stand for?
that's .NET execution. You get this very nice page that outlines exactly how you should do it. And if you remember, we had these commands in the project.json, and we have the web inside of it and EF, and now you just add test, and then you just go to the package manager console, or you will create a task for it, and you just run all the tests that you have in the project. And also, if you use this, I think it's Test Explorer is the native in the Visual Studio. Yeah, this one. It will look up the tests for you automatically. It doesn't work with the ReSharper test runner, sadly, not yet. But it works with this one, and it works from the command line also. And there's also build task for TFS.
Is there any chance that the editor templates will get back?
What is editor templates?
Display templates or editor templates? You create some editors for every kind of property, and then you just.
Okay, do you mean the HTML helpers? Those
Yeah.
are not that. You just
No.
don't have to use them anymore.
Yeah, okay.
But you
I
can
think
you can
HTML
just create new extension methods for the HTML.
to display for or editor for.
Yes, that's the HTML helper I'm talking about. And you can use them. They're still part of the framework. I just don't like them that much because you mix HTML with something different, and it just doesn't look like HTML anymore. And personally, I like to push it, and I like to generate the whole page. So I will be using those as well. But if you just prototype something, or if you're trying something, I think it's better to just write it in the HTML, because it will end up as an HTML anyway. So it looks better, and you just can see what's happening.
Yeah, and what about migration from old VC projects to new ones? Is there any possibility?
Basically, I guess it depends on what you need. Now you can't even link the DNX projects to the standard CS projects, but that will be coming with the RC2 release. And you will be able to work with it, but you can still link DNX projects to the DLLs directly, but that won't be needed anymore when we can link to CS projects. And the whole framework is not finished yet, and it has way less functionality than the current ASP.NET framework. So even for new projects now, you should be starting with the ASP.NET 4.6, unless you know it will be a small project where you can afford some bigger space for solving problems.
So it sounds like that even the stable version, let's say, will be still some kind of alpha version, or like first step in some direction.
Maybe I wouldn't call it alpha version. I probably think it will be more like less featured full framework. So it doesn't do everything, but the things that it does correctly. Any other questions?
No? Nope. Cool. So let's just close everything down.